Hey everybody, Nick here, and in this video we're going to cover 5 things that I wish I knew about automation agencies before I started one. If you guys are at the beginning point of your automation agency journey, this is going to help you avoid a ton of friction and grow much faster. Let's get into it. As always, this is just my own process. It's what got me to $72K a month with my automation agency, but I'm not trying to be prescriptive here. I'm not saying you need to do any of this stuff. So just take whatever makes sense to you and then leave all the irrelevant parts. No gatekeeping. I'm going to show you everything. I'm going to give you templates. I'll give you a big list of resources, basically a curriculum as well. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. First things first, what exactly are we going to talk about? Well, if I had known what I'm about to say when I started my automation agency, I would have gotten much further ahead much faster. The problems that I'm going to be discussing are basically problems that will eat into every part of your business, from the lead generation side of things to the client management side of things to the project management side of things to the fulfillment. So basically all of these problems they just provide like this general suppression to your ability to grow. And I'm going to show you systematically how you can solve all of them in a moment. The benefit to doing this now, as opposed to doing this sort of as the problems arise, is you'll just be able to deal with them preemptively. You'll be able to inoculate yourself against that. And then, if I could transport this knowledge back to me, about 2 years ago, I probably would have saved and at least made several $100,000 more dollars. And I like money, so hopefully you like money too. The first major thing that I've come to realize now running an automation agency is that being good at automation is not the same as being good at running an automation business. These are actually, unfortunately, 2 very different things. They require 2 very different skill sets, 2 very different types of experience. I'm going to dive into why right now. The issue here, and the issue for me as well, is that we'll spend a lot of time becoming really good at the automation side of things. So we'll become great at make.com or Zapier, or hell, even programming, understanding the core principles behind things like HTTP requests, scraping, APIs. And we'll gain this massive body of knowledge that will make us great at that. But we won't spend a lot of time on the actual automation business side of things, right? And it's not really even just the automation business. It's just like the running a business side of things. The reason these are 2 different things is that the first is engineering knowledge. It's knowledge about a particular set of technologies, whereas the other is practical business knowledge. It's just knowledge about the general business landscape, how to run a profitable and successful company, and that sort of thing. What I've found is that there are hundreds of thousands of incredible engineers, many of which that I have personally now hired, that will never make more than maybe 5 to 8K a month. And the reason why is because they're limited by their lack of modern business acumen. They will, understand technically how to build an automation. They'll get the reasons why at face value. But if you were to ask them to, say, diagnose the problem that the customer is facing, or really what the business use case is here, how you might be able to solve different business problems with a similar system, they'll just come up dry. And this lack of modern business acumen, I say modern here because internet businesses are a little bit different from most of the other sorts of businesses. They obviously share tons of similarities, but by missing this acumen, essentially, like all you're ever going to be for anybody is just like the builder. You're just going to be like the automator, the integrator, the builder. You're not going to be somebody that they could see working with more on like a partnership level, which is where you start getting the real hefty retainers, where you start getting sort of a lot more of the value, right? More in the consulting side of the client management than this is just some little contractor that I'm going to send myself some work to. So if your goal is to make money for yourself using automation, and I'll be honest, if your goal is to make money for yourself using any sort of business, you should learn the necessities of how to fulfill that service, and you should do it really well, of course. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't. I pride myself on my own abilities as an automator, and I'm very good at it. But the moment that you reach a satisfactory level, if you really want to cut down your learning curve, you should spend all the rest of your time learning to run the business and not necessarily just fulfilling the service. You should learn how to be that consultant or how to be that partner, not just how to be that little contractor that somebody sends work to every now and then. And the bonus here is that you spending time learning these skills will pay dividends because now they'll apply to all of your future business endeavors as well. Like if you're at the beginning stages of starting a business, you're probably going to run multiple businesses over the course of your life. And if you just like figure out the business problems, then hell, even if this is an automation business, but your next business is like a window cleaning company or something, the principles therein will be very similar to both. So the way that I see it, I always talk about ROI and stuff. For me, this is one of the most high ROI things that you could do. Now, how do you practically improve in this? Great question, Nick. If you think about it, and I had to do a little bit of research for this video, the agency model, which is what most people here are doing, you can do freelancing as well. You could do a couple of other sorts of business models, but I'm assuming most of you guys want to run an agency. The agency or the service business model is actually pretty old. It's been around for about 200 years. The very first ad agency was built in 1786, and I think that was in the UK somewhere. And it was brought over to the United States somewhere in the next 50 years, I believe. And then from there have been tons of ad agencies and marketing agencies and professional service agencies and that sort of thing that have cropped up, obviously, to solve these business problems. And since then, they've evolved quite a bit as well. But what I've found is that all of these different sorts of businesses that were open, they've all converged on a very similar set of skills, similar way of fulfilling projects, and similar way of managing clients. And what I've come to realize are that these skills are very particular. They are sales and marketing, sort of on the front end, project management and client management, sort of while you have the prospect, or client, I should say, and then the maximization of retention on the back end. So some mechanism to get them in, some mechanism to fulfill whatever it is that they're paying you for, and then some mechanism to get them in again, over and over and over and over again, just to squeeze as much value and juice out of every prospect as possible. So what I found is no one basically frames it like I did, but this is, I believe, the simplest and most straightforward way to put it. The great part is once you break it down on a skills basis, you can then just improve in each of these skills. All you need to do, or all I really did when I was in a lot of the people that are watching this shoes, is I just read a couple of books. I didn't read 500 books. I read like 1 or 2 books per topic. And then I just went out and implemented that specific book. Like I didn't try and, analysis paralysis. I didn't try and fill my brain with 5 trillion different ways of doing things, because in reality, there are multiple different ways to do the same thing. And if you just do what one of those things recommends, like prescribes, then you can get there as well. So what I have down here is I have a little practical curriculum. And I mean, you can call it a curriculum if you want. It's really not. It's just a collection of 5 or 6 books. And there are a bunch of YouTube videos that go alongside this stuff, and I've watched a ton. But if you just finish this and then you take care of the automation side of things, at least for this business model, you'll have like the theoretical basis upon which you can go and attack this business systematically. And then if you can just like get a few of your first introductory clients, you can very easily get to a 7 out of 10 in all of these skills. And if you're a 7 out of 10 in all 4 of these, you'll be like a top 1%, top agency or service business, not just like in your particular locale, but you'll probably be like top 1% in the world, because the service business model is so low barrier to entry that basically this is one of everybody's now, especially on the internet, first forays into business. So if you just like spend a little bit of time refining each of these skills, a 7 out of 10 isn't just like 2 points above a 5 out of 10. It's like 100 times as good, right? So my little curriculum here and the books and the resources that have made the biggest difference to me, in hindsight, are Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. That changed my life completely. I use basically every one of the principles that he talks about in that book all day long, every single day. And it's very consultative selling, which is now what I do. I used to be very hard line sort of sales, but now it's all very consultative, and Chris Voss was a massive help for me there. And then The Science of Selling, the author isn't coming to me at the moment, but The Science of Selling was a great book as well. Very systematic breakdown of the sales process. For project and client management, I'd recommend these 2. The Goal for project management. I talk about this quite often. It's the way that I've come up with my bottleneck way, model of thinking. And then Influence by Cialdini, who talks a lot about just like human behavior and how to optimize things like reciprocity and various human biases and whatnot. You're not looking to read these books because you want to become a better manipulator or something. You're reading these books specifically so that you can manage your clients better. You can give them more of what they ask you to give them. You can go above and beyond, and then you can improve your ability to retain. And that does take me to retention maximization. The best book on which I've read is called Unreasonable Hospitality. So I'm going to attach this to the Gamma, and this is going to be in the link in the description. I would recommend you guys, this is the first time that you're looking at any of these topics, take a month or 2 to go through these 5 books. And the second that you're done with these 5, you'll know basically everything that I know, honestly, and everything that I use on a daily basis in my own businesses. So the second major thing that I wish I could transport back in time is that what you build is not what the client will see, basically at all. I have a picture of what looks like a AI-generated iceberg here. And basically what the client sees is just what's up here. But what actually went into the project is everything down here. And everything down here is like 7 times as big as what the client sees, right? In reality, most of the work that you're going to put in as an automation agency or a freelancer is not going to be visible to, or even if it is visible, it's not going to be interpretable by the client, which is a curse, but it's also a blessing. It's a massive opportunity just waiting to be taken advantage of. It's a curse because it means that most people that have gotten an automation client will spend dozens of hours working on the systems. They're working on the flows, working on the make.com, Zapier, NA10, whatever. And then they do all that just so that the end result that the client sees is a little email or maybe like a new row added in the CRM or something. And so like the dozens of hours that you spend, like that isn't reflected at all in the end result. It just looks like an email. So a lot of clients will be like, well, what, this guy just made an email for me? That's it? That's the real juice? Why did he blog 25 hours then, hypothetically? And that's something you have to fight against, which I'll talk about in a second. But anyway, that's the curse part. It's also a massive blessing because when your work is set up in this way, it lets you use templates, it lets you use blueprints, and it lets you use a lot more to basically template your work and then achieve the exact same results as if you built it from scratch. Let's say you hypothetically had a system that was just plug and play, drag and drop, and it resulted in that same email. You could have just, opened up your scenario editor, imported that file, pressed a couple of buttons, and maybe changed some of the inputs and outputs. Total project time, which might have taken you an hour. And from the client perspective, you deliver the exact same result. So you can do it in 1/10 of the time, and then the client gets exactly what they asked for as well, which is a win-win. Now, underneath here, I have a bolded section, which is that presentation is the most important part of fulfillment. And I believe this really, really strongly. And I'll show you how I've massaged my own delivery process to accommodate this. But the way that you deliver your project, the way that you present it, even the tiny things that you don't really think matter, they do. They really, really do, disproportionately so. So how do you actually practically go ahead and fix this in your own business? Well, in order to eliminate this as a problem, what I did is I put myself in my client's shoes and I asked them, out of all the interactions with me from start to finish, from all of them, what is the client thinking? What's the client feeling? And how is the client like perceiving me as a service provider? So when I say all of the interactions, I mean, if you could just like zoom out and then pretend that it's just a big graph or like a number line with like the dates upon which you guys have interacted. The first one might be the cold email that you sent them. The second one might be maybe a video that you sent them. The third one might be a call that you jump on. The fourth one might be the contract, the proposal, that sort of thing. Fifth one might be the kickoff call. Sixth one might be some project delivery update. Seventh one might be the project fulfillment. Then maybe the eighth one is like an email or a video that you send them in a few months after just to like check in on them and see how they're doing. So I mapped all of this out. Obviously, every client's different, but I mapped all of this out just on average. And I asked myself, how do I maximize the quality of every single one of these things? What are the clients seeing? It's not as much as what I put into it, but what's the end result for the client? What are they seeing? What does that email look like? What's the Google Doc that I send them look like? What's the video that I send them look like? When I deliver, what's the end result from their perspective, not from mine? And from there, I realized that the vast majority of how a client evaluates the success of your work is not in the many hours that you spend doing the project itself. It's on the small little sliver of that iceberg all the way up at the top. They don't care about this. They can't see this. All they see is that nice, cute little part at the very top of your project, essentially. And the cool part about this is this reframes fulfillment completely. And it forces you to focus on what the client considers important, not all the work that you spend to deliver that thing. Conceptually, I think of this very similarly to the whole benefits versus features thing, because you're now putting a client first. If you guys have done any sort of copywriting before, there's this massive, massive point, this hurdle that people need to cross in order to become good copywriters. And that's where you start writing in terms of customer benefits instead of just the features of the service provider. Features might be stuff like, our patented 3XXX process is the best in the market. If you think about that, like all you're doing is you're just bragging about how great your process is, but you're not really framing this in terms of the customer, right? If you wanted to frame this in terms of the customer, you'd say something like, our process is 3 times faster than everybody else and it costs twice as little. And you can get started today with 3 button clicks, right? Those are all benefits for the customer because the customer is worried about things like friction, cost, time to fulfillment, that sort of thing. So this is the exact same process I feel as doing that just for like your business fulfillment process. So exact same concept. You just put the client first and you ask yourself, how can I maximize the quality of their experience? My example, what I personally do, and how I live this vicariously is I will record a video at the end of every one of my projects and then I'll deliver it alongside the systems. Most of the time, the systems that I build, what do? They it's a CRM and it updates a record, right? It's a proposal generator system and it just like creates a proposal template. These are pretty and you should definitely spend time on the actual thing itself. Like in the proposal case, you do have a lot of leverage if you make the proposal really beautiful. But like the thing that I'm showing them, sort of like the delivery of it, is encapsulated in these videos and then the documentation that I provide alongside it. That's a major lever that I could pull to make my project look a lot better and a lot more polished. So I literally, when I was doing this, I spent a disproportionate amount of time making sure that the beginning of my video was engaging and interesting. And then I made sure that the text documentation that I was providing was great. And the whole idea was, I would literally focus on like, what font am I going to use for this like Google Doc? A lot of people are like, well, that's a silly waste of time. Who gives a shit about the font? Well, the client will. The client just paid you a fair amount of money. They want you to deliver something nice. They want it to look very polished. And if you can make it 10% better, and it's just the formatting, and it takes you maybe half an hour to do that, the client will evaluate the entire project as 10% better because that's really what they're seeing. That's the iceberg. The third thing that I want to talk about is that in the automation industry, there are 1,000,001 things that you can do, but only a handful of these things that you do will actually move the needle. Now, what do I mean by move the needle? If we take a couple steps back, moving the needle in an automation business is making money. It's generating more top line revenue. It's saving more bottom line, so profit. It's, I don't know, well, I don't even want to say it's like growing your notoriety. It's building your network, because it really isn't. The really most important thing is just making cashola, making those Benjamins. So at any given point, if you're running an automation business, you basically have 1,000,000 things that are constantly battling you and battling each other for attention. And they're begging you to pay attention to them and take care of them. Stuff like updating your website, stuff like making your social media pictures all nice, stuff like getting some headshots, stuff like changing changing the way that you wrote the copy or something like that on some email. And don't get me wrong, all of these are important in their own times and places. But where most people are right now, which is under the $10,000 a month mark, the vast majority of these tasks, although they feel productive, aren't. I want to say 99.9% of all of the things that you could do here just are not productive at the end of the day, towards that end of making more money, which is really all that we should really be giving a shit about. In reality, the things that tend to move the needle are very boring. They're very monotonous. They're not at all exciting. They're not at all interesting. It's not what you see when you go on Netflix, type in The Social Network and watch, that amazing 2-hour flick. Because all that, Hollywood will tell you that business is like meetings with a lawyer, big presentations, seminars, all that cool shit. In reality, the most important part about really any business, especially the lower level ones, is like boring, monotonous, routine, mundane stuff. And that mundane stuff is what really moves the needle. So don't try and think about how to excel in business in terms of maybe what media has portrayed it as or what Hollywood has portrayed it as. In reality, 99% of the time it's just, I found something that kind of works. I'm just going to do that really fast. It's like pressing a button that prints you money and just trying to press it as quickly as possible. Imagine you went to the casino and you just found that one slot machine paid out a little bit more when you pulled the thing. Instead of you losing on average, I forget what it is, like 13% of the time or something, you won 13% of the time. Like the most optimal thing for you to do would be to go to that machine and just like pull the lever all day, every day, and try and find ways that you could be at the casino more to pull the lever more or make the machine work faster, right? That sort of boring stuff is really how you become financially successful with business. So the reality is that if you do these monotonous as boring things, a lot of which involve customer sourcing, lead acquisition, that sort of deal, you're going to move 1,000,000 times faster than the people that have these super exciting, interesting lives that you see on social media all the time that just had a meeting with some big hotshot multi-millionaire and they took a selfie together at some super ritzy cafe, or, I just traveled to China to work on some big project. Like you are going to work and you're going to grow way faster than those people if you just do the things that really suck and are boring to do, but then if you just do them every day, you make more money. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the reasons why a lot of people would ask me, like, Nick, can you make a day in the life? Can you make a video recording vlog sort of thing about what you do on a daily basis? And what I do on a daily basis is I literally just sit here and then I just type on my computer and I do the same tasks, again and again and again and again. They're very monotonous. They're very boring. So it's not really like if you wanted to see the day in the life of somebody that is growing and actually improving their business, it tends to be just super monotonous. And if you want to achieve the same things that they do, you just need to do the same things that they do. So what are some examples of that verbal diarrhea? Cold DMs and cold emails are usually the most consistent ways that you can get your first customer without any ad spend, without massive loss in margins, without you putting a bunch of capital up front, right? But they're also very boring. You usually just, have some process where you find somebody's profile, you try and regurgitate something unique about their profile, you have some little introductory offer you want to give them, and then you just do that hundreds of times over the course of every week, every day, basically. But for every hour that you spend on one of these low super low interest, boring tasks, you get a disproportionate return relative to all the other things that you could be doing. And if you guys think back to a couple of problems ago, I mentioned how one of the things that you should be doing if you really want to grow quickly is reach a sufficient level with make.com or sufficient level with the automation platform of your choice, and then just move on and start working on business, right? This is a really good example. I mentioned reading make.com documentation. I can't tell you how many people that I have seen, some of which are in my community and some of which I see on YouTube and that send me questions over email. They just spend every waking hour trying to like brush up on some fine-tuned make.com skill that they will only ever use 1.5% of the total time, but they don't spend an equivalent amount of time on skills that they will use literally every single day with customers, which are stuff like sales skills, writing skills, communication skills, video presentation skills. The two just don't really make sense, right? So how do you practically fix this? Well, the first is you need to separate feelings of monotony from feelings of stagnancy. A lot of the time we'll feel stagnant because the things that we're doing are monotonous, and it's just the same thing every day. But if I think back to my fastest growth in business and my fastest growth on YouTube, kind of building my brand, it's just been when I do the exact same thing every day. And it does feel quite monotonous when you're doing it. But when you look back in the rearview mirror, a couple of months later, you realize just how much growth you've made and how you really have never made that much growth ever before. Realize that successful businesses are often very boring, and that's just part and parcel of what the money-making process is like. Capitalism is a game that we have all been basically unwittingly signed into, especially if you are, obviously this doesn't apply for every country around the world, and I know that people have slight differences in their priorities and whatnot, but it's a game that you're entered into, and your goal when you enter into a game is usually to win the game, or at least do as well as you can, place as high on the leaderboard, right? So you need to find the ways that you play. And if you're playing Super Smash Bros, for instance, and the way that you win the game is just by spamming the A button or something like that, even if it's the most boring way to play, you should be spamming the A button if you want to win. So what I would recommend if you're at less than 10K a month, what this means in reality is to focus the vast majority of your time just on sales activities, direct sales activities. Once you've reached a sufficient level of knowledge, then you should start and maintain a daily outreach regimen. And then you should just make sure that you do this most important thing first and foremost every day. If you get a handle on this really quickly, you can achieve leaps and bounds more growth than most people can in just like a month than most people can in several years, because you will have done way more outreach. And that takes me to another point, which is that consistency is worth more than any master plan. Instead of building a super long-term master plan, like I did many times throughout my business career, just do your high ROI activities every day for a month and then just see where you land. You can evaluate afterwards. Why? Well, the super long-term master plan is probably like a year-long, 2-year-long, 5-year, 10-year-long plan. And we all have them, of course. And I'm not going to sit here and wax poetic about how 99% of them will never reach, the goal. But we all have them. But you can substantially improve your ability to achieve them if you just do something really small and boring and consistent every day for a month, and then just sort of see what your progress is like. So the reason why is, and I have to make this more theoretical, but in my mind, there are two sorts of problems. The first is proportional problems. These scale directly with the amount of effort you put in. And the second are permissive problems, where they don't scale proportionally to the amount of effort you put in. They don't. All you need to do is just show up every day. Hell, even if you show up for 5 minutes every day or 2 hours every day, doesn't really make that much of a difference. You just need to show up a tiny bit every day. And if you just do that for long enough, things will happen. What's an example of the second thing? The stock market. Time in the market almost always beats timing the market, for instance. If you just bought, the S&P 500 30 years ago, and if you just held, aka if you were just in it every day, then right now your results would be unbelievable. I don't know what the gain on the S&P 500 has been over the course of the last 20 or 30 years or whatever, but I guarantee you it's been a lot. How about the gym? You could spend 17 hours working out one day, but would that make you grow 17 times as fast? No, it would not. It is a permissive thing. If you showed up half an hour to the gym every day for 17 days, you would grow much, much more than if you tried working out for 17 hours in one day. That'd be a really interesting day. Maybe I should try that. That'd be a hell of a live stream blog. Now, in business, especially the automation agency game, we have elements of both, of course. If you put more effort in, you will tend to win proportionally more. But the most important factor for me has been the permissive aspect. It's been just the consistency part. If I just show up every day, even if I just record a really lousy video, for instance, or if I do some really lousy cold email outreach, or my lead sourcing sucks, whatever. That's like the dumb whack-a-mole way to play, and yet it works much, much better than trying to intricately work out everything in advance. Because reality is always very different from your expectations. The map is very different from the territory. When I simply started showing up and doing small daily activities, like sourcing 100 leads a day, or doing even five Upwork applications a day, took me like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or one YouTube video a day, I would always see tremendous growth a few months later. And everybody around me would be like, Jesus, who the heck is this guy? Where is all of this coming from? Well, where it was coming from was that boring stuff that I was doing every day. Now, how do you practically fix this? If you consider sales activities high ROI, which we do, then building a lifestyle that allows you to do consistent sales activities on a daily basis is even higher ROI. What I mean by this is, let's say it took you 3 hours right now to go out and do a bunch of sales. And then, I don't know, next week you get paid $900 because of that 3 hours that you put in this week, right? You could make $900 in 3 hours. So you could have a rate of $300 an hour. Or what you could do is you could just take one little step back and you could just find a way to design your life a little better so that you can do consistent sales activities every day for the next year. If you spent 3 hours intentionally considering, what does my day-to-day look like? How do I optimize my day-to-day so that I have more time available for sales activities? What are some activities that I can cut out right now so that I can just get back to focusing on sales activities? What are some routines that I might be able to try? Let me try and test 3 of these and just see my results. If you just spend 3 hours doing that, then by the end of the year, you might make $328,500, which is 900 times 365. The point I'm making here is design your life in a way that allows you to do these activities every single day, and you will achieve disproportionately higher results, right? If a good example of what I've mentioned multiple times is I just have my laptop next to my bed. And when I wake up in the morning, instead of me staring at the ceiling or reaching for my phone, the first thing I do is I'll go to my laptop. And then my laptop's way more stimulating or engaging than anything else that I could do. So I just start working, honestly. And that way I bang out another 45 minutes of just things that I need to do that day. And I do them without really sweating or really blinking. It's not hard for me because it's not proportional. It's simply permissive. The best resources that I found for this, there's a blog post on Less Wrong, which is basically like a website dedicated to minimizing human biases. And this guy, Ale Kidjash, who I love to death, posted this sequence a while ago called Hammer Time. And the first one's called Bug Hunt. And in this, he basically goes through a bunch of these like rationality techniques to eliminate the bullshit in your day and to structure it in such a way that you can be happier and then, in my case, focus more on the stuff that actually moves the needle. So I did this a while ago, right before I was starting YouTube. And then before that, I think like a year and a half before that, right as I was really scaling up my cold outreach. And both times that I did this, I found so many bugs in my life that after I removed, I was able to achieve, pretty silly results. And if I hadn't done this, there's no way in hell I would have been able to record a video every day, right? It's just because I eliminated all the bugs and all the low-hanging fruit in my life that I was able to do that. And then, I forget how many YouTube subs I got in the first month. I think it was like 3,500 or 4,000 or something. But yeah, that's really important. And the other one is this book called Atomic Habits, which I don't have a direct link to, but you can just get it on Amazon or whatever. I'm not affiliated with it. I don't have an affiliate link, but Atomic Habits is really important because one of the core tenets was if you just do something every day for a long enough period of time, even if it's like a 1-minute thing on day 1 and a 2-minute thing on day 2 and a 3-minute thing on day 3, by the end of the year, you'll have achieved, 3,800% more or something than if you had just tried to do it like one-offs, trying to do it sporadically. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to mention, and this is now hyper-specific to the automation industry, is that automation, the service that we're providing, is actually very sticky. So your priority in automation is getting as many opportunities as possible, because if you just get as many opportunities as possible, the ones that you end up retaining, those are going to last you for basically ever. The reason why is because automation has the potential to touch every aspect of a person's business. So if you just wait long enough, if you just work with that person for long enough, what'll happen is it eventually will. You will eventually touch every part of a person's business, from their finance to their operations, to their lead generation, to their sales, to their marketing, to their fulfillment, to literally every part. Because that is your job. Your job is to automate, but not just automate a particular thing. Eventually, you will want to automate everything. The value there is that if you're responsible for that, it's very difficult to justify getting rid of you because you now touch every part of a person's business. And odds are the systems that you developed over the course of the last day, week, month, or year are delivering outsized value every single time that they do one of those things, right? In practical terms, as long as you're competent, your churn is going to be very low. In many industries, churn is quite high. In the automation industry, churn's really low. So that's one of our main advantages in automation. And then because a lot of your work only needs to be done once, but then from the client perspective, as we talked about earlier, they perceive the value constantly because they see the emails go out, they see the CRM records made and all that stuff. From the client perspective, you're delivering value basically forever, which means you have a ton of leverage. A single client can easily be worth over $80K a year, and it'll take you relatively little time and upkeep. So if you want to make $1 million, just have 12 clients, for instance. How do you take advantage of this in practicality? Well, provide a disproportionate, dummy thick amount of value early on to maximize the odds of getting to work with a client in the first place. Then the entire time that you're working with them, like over deliver. I don't just mean over deliver like 1%, 2%. I mean like drastically over deliver constantly, so that the first thing that comes to their mind is, holy shit, who is this person? Who is this company? I've never met anybody like this. I need to work with them. Doesn't matter if I'm on a $500 a month, $1,000 a month subscription or retainer. I just need to have them in my Rolodex. They're very important. The reason why is because in reality, you may think that you're over delivering, but you're not. Because the second that you lock in a client with that low churn, your work that you put in now becomes like 500 times as valuable. You basically instantly get a massive multiple on the time that you had put in. So what I do is I build over delivery into my business model. If I say something is going to take 2 weeks, it usually takes like a week. If I say something is going to take like a month, it usually takes like 3 weeks, something along the lines. I'm not saying it has to be minus 1 week exactly, but the point I'm making is just build over delivery into your business model. Practical example, if your clients have a stated timeline of X days to project completion, then deliver an X minus 3 days and just do that every time. Show the client a proposal that says it's going to take this long. And then internally, when you do your project management, if you're doing it yourself or if you're assigning it to other people, assign it to that due date minus 3 days. So you just always go ahead of time, basically. Excuse me. Another practical example is, in the proposals that you send out or in the scopes, emails, or in the messages on platforms, whatever, that outline what they're going to be getting, give them all of that and then give them something extra. And just do that consistently every time. Literally build this into your business model, build that into your margins, build that into your projected profit and all that stuff. And I guarantee you will find like 5 times the margin or profit that you were expecting, because some of these people will choose to work with you long-term. The second they're working with you long-term, you're basically good. You're going to just get stupid multiples on your time and energy. Instead of you spending 10 hours to get one project at $10,000, you'll spend 100 hours to get one project, and that'll pay you $1 million, right? So that is that. I hope you guys appreciated this video. In closing, being good at automation does not mean being good at running an automation business. So distinguish between the two and understand that a large portion of your success in this industry is just going to be in your ability to acquire like agency skills that may or may not actually be related to automation. The second thing is that once you're sufficient at automation, aka what I'd recommend is once you finish my introductory make.com for people that want to make real money course, get out there and just start looking for leads. Get out there and start generating them, because that will teach you more than just spending all day reading ever will. The last thing I'm going to mention is that consistency smooths out everything. So even if your execution is poor, even if your ability to monetize these strategies sucks, even if your writing is shitty, or even if your sales is trash, if you just show up consistently long enough, it'll just smooth all of that out. And you'll win simply by virtue of overwhelming momentum, which I believe I have done many times before. And I know that many people in both my community and on YouTube have done as well. Hope you guys appreciated that. I had a lot of fun putting it together. If you have any questions about this, just leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to answer. Otherwise, if you could do me a big solid and subscribe to the YouTube channel, I'm noticing the number of people watching to the proportion of those subscribed has definitely gone down recently. So if you've just watched my videos more than a couple times, I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to the next video. Thanks so much.